Why does it feel like you're getting poorer every single day? On February 28th, a military strike on Iran triggered 5 massive economic waves that will hit your bank account. Right now, you probably think it's just high gas prices, but that is only the beginning. I've done the math to show you the reality most people are missing. In this video, I will break down all 5 waves, provide the exact dates they land, and give you a specific cheat code plan to protect your savings. By the end of this video, you will have a clear strategy to stay ahead of this crisis and keep your wealth intact while others struggle. Before we dive in, what is your biggest financial stressor right now? Is it gas, groceries, or credit card debt? Comment your age and the city you're watching from below. The anatomy of the blowback. To understand your future, you must understand the anatomy of the crisis. On February 27, 2026, the world believed in a breakthrough. Diplomacy was the headline. 24 hours later, the logic of force replaced the logic of words. Operation Epic Fury saw U.S. and Israeli assets strike deep into Iranian territory. The geopolitical fallout is for historians to debate. Your concern is the 26 days that followed. Iran did not just retaliate, they severed a primary artery of the global body. By March 4th, the Strait of Hormuz, a 21-mile bottleneck responsible for 20% of the world's seaborne oil, was declared closed. By March 16th, commercial traffic plummeted from 130 ships per day to effectively zero. The International Energy Agency has classified this as the single largest energy supply disruption in human history, dwarfing the 1973 OPEC embargo and the 1979 Iranian Revolution combined. The release of 400 million barrels from emergency reserves was not a policy adjustment. It was a desperate attempt to perform CPR on a dying market. Brent crude surged from $71 to peak near $120 per barrel in mere weeks. While ceasefire signals have pulled it back to $100, any duration beyond 6 weeks puts $150 on the table. This is the baseline of our new reality. Phase 1. The blood of civilization and the diesel trap. Wave 1 is the gas price you see today. The national average of $3.96 is merely the visible tip of the spear. But the visionaries look at diesel. Diesel is the fuel of civilization. It powers the 18-wheelers, the refrigerated logistics chains, and the heavy machinery of every farm in the Midwest. Diesel has surged 47% from pre-war levels. This is the first law of economic friction. Every cent added to the price of diesel is a direct, non-negotiable tax on every physical object you will ever buy. A $1 increase in fuel prices removes roughly $150 billion in annual consumer spending from the economy. Let us contrast 2 archetypes. Maya, a teacher earning $58,000 with $3,000 in savings, sees the $47 monthly increase in her commute. She immediately eliminates her $6 daily coffee habit. She has accepted the friction. Ryan and Jess, earning $94,000 but carrying nearly $4,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest, feel the same $47 hit. They changed nothing. It feels manageable in isolation. This is the fatal error of the average mind. They view expenses as individual items rather than a compounding force. They are currently experiencing the quiet Thursday afternoon where their bank account is lower than it should be, yet they lack the framework to understand why. That vague sense of money moving faster than you can track is Wave 1 doing exactly what it was designed to do, drain your liquidity before the real impact arrives. Phase 2, the harvest of friction and the lag effect. 30 to 60 days from the initial strike, Wave 2 hits the grocery store. Most people believe food prices are dictated by the weather. The builders know they are dictated by the cost of motion. Unlike non-perishable goods, you cannot warehouse a strawberry for 6 months waiting for shipping rates to drop. Perishables operate on a zero buffer schedule. When diesel spikes, freight carriers pass 60 to 80% of that cost to the retailer within a month via weekly fuel surcharges. Before this conflict, food inflation was a manageable 2.4%. Current projections have it climbing to 4.4%, but that is a conservative macro statistic. Look at the micro details. Beef was already projected to rise 9% this year. Coffee and sugar were up 5 to 6%. When you layer a 47% diesel spike onto a supply chain with zero cushion, the price ceiling does not just rise, it shatters. For Maya, her $340 grocery bill is transforming into $410. She has already moved to batch cooking and canceled her meal kit subscriptions. She is trading convenience for sovereignty. Ryan and Jess, however, will stand at the checkout in May, staring at a total $55 higher than usual, and wonder if they are buying more food. They are not. They are simply paying for the fuel used to transport that food from a farm they have never seen, influenced by a naval blockade they chose to ignore. The global supply chain is a miracle of efficiency until it becomes a weapon of mass inflation. Phase 3. The velocity of leisure and the summer cliff. Your summer vacation has already been repriced, and this is where the ticking clock begins to accelerate. Wave 3 is the summer travel shock. Jet fuel surged more than 60% following the closure of the strait. Fuel is the single largest expense for any airline, accounting for up to a third of operating costs. Airlines have two choices: go bankrupt or pass the cost to the passenger. Historically, they choose the latter with predatory efficiency. Analysts are projecting 30% fare increases for the summer of 2026. Spirit Airlines, the budget benchmark, saw certain fares jump over 100% in a single week. A $79 ticket to suffer through a budget flight has become a $176 ticket to suffer. The math has stopped making sense. Unlike groceries, airline pricing models bake these costs in months in advance. These prices will not come down even if a ceasefire is signed tomorrow. Maya has already booked her July flight for $287. Ryan and Jess have been meaning to look into it since December. When they finally do, they will find the same route costs nearly double. They will either cancel their memories or, more likely, put the difference on their 22% interest credit card, digging a deeper hole in a sinking ship. They are waiting for a deal that will never come, while the window of affordability slams shut. Phase 4. The nitrogen silence and the October surprise. Wave. 4 is the invisible timer. It is the most dangerous wave because its causal link is buried in chemistry. Most people do not realize that natural gas is the primary raw material for nitrogen fertilizer. Fossil fuels account for up to 90% of the cost of producing ammonia and urea. Furthermore, 1/3 of the world's seaborne fertilizer trade passes through that same shuttered Strait of Hormuz. Within the first week of Operation Epic Fury, Gulf producers halted exports. Granular urea jumped 50%. In the Midwest, retailers have stopped quoting prices entirely. They cannot guarantee delivery, so they cannot set a price. Here is the timeline of the trap. Spring 2026 is planting season. The decisions farmers make this month determine the harvest of the fall. You will not feel this wave in April. You will feel it in October when you stand in the produce aisle convinced you are simply bad at budgeting. No one is going to hold a press conference to tell you that your autumn meals will be 20% more expensive because of a missile strike in February. It will just quietly happen. Maya understands this. She is looking at a chest freezer today, securing her ability to store food at current prices. Ryan and Jess will tell their friends in October that groceries are crazy right now, and their friends will nod in agreement. Neither will understand that their financial pain was decided 6 months prior in the Persian Gulf. Phase 5. The final boss and the Fed guillotine. The most expensive wave is the one that does not show up as a price increase, but as a number that refuses to fall. This is the interest rate trap. At the dawn of 2026, the average person was building plans around rate cuts. They were waiting for cheaper mortgages, cheaper car loans, and relief on their debt. That expectation is now a corpse. The Federal Reserve is currently a doctor standing over a patient who has both a high fever, which is inflation, and is losing blood, which is a recession. The doctor has only one medicine and it treats one symptom by making the other worse. If they cut rates to save the economy, inflation explodes. If they keep rates high to kill inflation, the economy bleeds out. Jerome Powell's March press conference confirmed the bind. He does not look like a man in control. He looks like a man watching a slow-motion train wreck. What does this mean for the 1% versus the average? The average person, like Ryan and Jess, is carrying part of the $1.27 trillion in national credit card debt at 24% interest. They were waiting for a refinance window that is now slammed shut. Recession probability is now hovering at 50%. Maya, conversely, has no high-interest debt and has kept her index funds untouched. She is earning 4.2% on her savings while she waits for the volatility to settle. Here is the hard truth. Data from over 1 million investor accounts show the average investor has underperformed the S&P 500 for 15 years straight. The gap is a staggering 850 basis points. This is not because they are bad at picking stocks. It is because they sell during the volatility and buy back during the recovery. If you feel the urge to sell right now, you are reacting with a nervous system designed for the Stone Age, not the digital age. 7 of the 10 best trading days in the last 20 years occurred during bear markets. Missing just the 10 best days of each decade would turn a 15,000% return into a measly 91%. Wealth is not built by timing the market. It is built by the stomach to stay in when the world feels like it is ending. Maya, $16,000 in index funds is down on paper, but she has closed the app. Ryan opened his statement, felt sick, and is one bad news cycle away from locking in a loss that will haunt his retirement for decades. After hearing about these 5 waves, do you feel like a Maya who is preparing or a Ryan who is reacting? Be honest. Comment Maya or Ryan below. There is no shame in realizing where you stand. The only shame is staying there. The pivot and the authority of preparation. Now I must address the counter-narrative. Some will argue that a sudden peace treaty or a diplomatic pivot could cool these waters by April. They will tell you that the oil will flow and the fertilizer will arrive, perhaps. But a visionary never bets the security of their family on the kindness of politicians or the stability of a war zone. If the situation resolves, you simply end up with a larger emergency fund and a more efficient lifestyle. If it does not, you are the only one with an ark while the floodwaters rise. True authority comes from being ready for the worst, while the average person hopes for the best. The laws of the visionary, your 2026 survival code. Understanding the waves is useless without the execution of law. If you want to emerge from 2026 with your wealth intact, you must follow these 4 mandates starting this week. Law 1. Liquidity is your fortress. Nearly half of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency. When everything becomes more expensive, a broken car becomes a debt trap. High-yield savings accounts are paying over 4% right now. That is 10 times the national average. There is no excuse for your cash to be sitting in a traditional bank earning 0. Move it today. Law 2. Debt is a fire, not a tool. If you are carrying a 22% credit card balance, you are in a state of financial emergency. Paying off that card is mathematically identical to earning a guaranteed, tax-free 22% return. You cannot find that investment anywhere else on earth. Attack your debt with the same aggression you would use to put out a fire in your kitchen. If you have been a Ryan until today, Law 2 is your rebirth. This is the moment you stop being a victim of compound interest and start being a master of it. Law 3. The Stoic investor wins. Do not touch your long-term investments. Do not move to cash to see how this plays out. The history of the market is a history of people who waited for clarity and missed the recovery. The shares you buy during this period of Operation Epic Fury and the Hormuz closure will likely be the highest returning assets of your life. Set the automation and walk away. Law 4. Audit your exposure. If you have a long commute in a low-efficiency vehicle, your life just became significantly more expensive. If you run a business moving physical goods, renegotiate your freight contracts before the full force of the diesel surcharge hits your next invoice. The philosophy of the elite. The households that survive economic shocks are never the ones who earn the most money. They are the ones who adjust the earliest. They are the ones who looked at the gas station sign in March and did not see an annoyance. They saw the first domino in a global chain reaction. Ryan and Jess will be fine, in a sense. They will keep working, keep paying, and keep wondering why they never seem to get ahead. They will spend the rest of 2026 in a state of perpetual quiet struggle, paying more for their groceries, more for their flights, and more for their debt. Maya did not do anything dramatic. She did not win the lottery. She simply understood the timeline. She moved before the crowd. That is the only difference between the elite and the average, the ability to act on information before it becomes common knowledge. As for those of you still watching, you have stayed until the end, which means you are likely part of the 1% who actually value depth over distraction. Here is the bonus truth that most people are too afraid to say. Inflation is not a bug in the system. It is a feature. It is a silent tax that redistributes wealth from those who hold currency to those who hold assets. When the government releases emergency oil reserves or the Fed keeps rates high, they are managing a system that was never designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to keep the machine running. Your only job is to own the machine, not to be the fuel that burns inside it. If you have understood the gravity of what we have discussed today, I want you to leave a very specific mark. Comment "I am awake" below. This is our secret password for this session. It tells me that you are not just watching a video, you are absorbing a new frequency of financial reality. If you found value in this analysis, subscribe and share this with one person who is still complaining about gas prices without seeing the storm behind them. We do not beg for likes. We invite you to join a community of builders who refuse to be victims of the matrix. The next wave is already moving. The question is, are you building an ark or are you waiting for the rain? Click here to watch our next deep dive on asset protection in a high inflation era. I will see you there.